what does that say about you know, or us? So I'm up here saying all this. I hope that in the future I make good on my promises to myself and other people, and not just talk a good game. But you have an opportunity now to are you gonna continue this dang freight train of non-renewable resources? You know, just feed on into it, or are you gonna? I mean, making this choice, you can maybe be an example. Make King George an example. We're not gonna, you know. There are other options. In solar, I recently rode a bicycle to California, and yeah, I did that. And I was looking at just one of the most beautiful sights one of them was the wind turbines in the Midwest. Not just because it's a spiritual experience. It's like something just says, this is right, this is good. And yeah, it's not efficient. But the lie is that it's not efficient because it doesn't work. No, it's not efficient because the dang money that they put into nuclear power and they put into fracking, if they put that money into they put that same money into it, it can be efficient. I'm saying it can be efficient. They don't put that money into it because they don't believe in the hippies and the tree huggers. And I'm saying, man, come on. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Greco. Hi, my name is Bob Fogg. I own property on the Jersey Road. I presently live in Louisa County on Lake Anna. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but after hearing so many other people speak, I felt like it was almost mandatory that I come up before you. I grew up in Westmoreland County. I grew up on the Potomac River. I own some property in Westmoreland County now that's close to the Rappahannock. So, needless to say, I care for the Potomac and I care for the Rappahannock. And I attended the meeting in Montrose back a few weeks ago. And I want to tell y'all, I got to be honest with you. So far, everything I've heard about the fracking was all against it. In the meeting in Montrose, as far as I was concerned, all of the speakers were experts from Colorado and from Charlottesville who were against fracking. The people from the industry were not allowed to speak. They were not allowed to answer questions when questions came up about it. It was all a one-sided deal as far as I was concerned. I have an interest because I have land that could be drilled upon, okay? So, am I partial? You might say that. But I'm also partial the other way too. I would like to know the real truth. And I would like for you guys to know and hear the real truth. Not just the one side you've been hearing all so far. And I would like for these people to hear that truth. Because everything I read in the newspaper is all against it. And I understand Mr. Stewart has proposed the bill and has gotten it passed. A lady from Colorado came to speak in Montrose. She was speaking against it. But you know what? I heard some things that she said. She said in her county, they had 3,400 wells in her county. And she said, as of right now, they have no problems with those 3,400 wells. They had a few problems back a few years ago when they first began. A few people had some mud in their wells. The oil company took care of all of it. Those people had free water until they drilled the new water wells. They took care of it. And they asked her, said, what would have happened if they couldn't? She said they would have had to provide them water for as long as they needed to, forever. But they didn't. They drilled the new water wells. And 3,400 wells, and they had no problems. She was speaking for the other side, but you know what? I thought that was a good thing, because they had no problems with that. And I'm just asking you now to look at the other side. The lady back there said something about mineral. I told you I live on Lake Anna. I live on what's called the hot side. I live 5 miles from the power plant. I live 6 miles from the epicenter of that earthquake. You know what? I'm on Medicare now. I'm still alive. I sleep great every night. That power plant doesn't bother me not one bit. There's so many people in the world that are scared to death of nuclear power. I'm not. You just can't overlook and be scared of everything, or you have to worry about a meteor coming down and hitting you on top of the head. Yes, I want you to study the facts on this issue and study it hard. But I would like for you to study it and not just react to everything that you read in the newspapers. Thank you. My name's Fun.
Good evening, and thank you very much for working very hard for this county. I really appreciate it. My name is Rolanda Wright, and as I listen tonight to all of my neighbors and constituents here in this county, there are great minds here, and I know together we can come to some good solutions that will benefit all of us. One of my great concerns is for children, and as a mother of 4 and a wife of a retired military service member, I have had the pleasure and great opportunity of moving about the earth and seeing a lot of places and watching people live in their environment. Today, I do a lot of studies on within the immigration realm. And what we do know from empirical findings is that a lot of people are coming to this nation. And one of those reasons is because their homeland is basically, in a lot of ways, a wasteland. Therefore, I implore you, like all the good people here in King George, to study very hard this issue on fracking. What I also implore all of us is to think about this week, this month, to really think about the mission here, why we live in King George, versus, let's say, do we want to live in a place that is industrialized significantly, or do we want to live in a place that preserves pastoral care? I know that I'm a city girl, and I moved to King George, and I have a host of neighbors that teach me about farming, and that's an awesome thing. What I also know is I had the opportunity to have beautiful bees in my backyard and a tree dying. And I went to the store like someone ignorant and bought something to help my tree grow. When I sprayed it, the next day, the bees were gone. I had to wait actually 3 months before I saw bees again. I take this very serious, very serious. Like one of the fellows said here, water is our life. It is our life. We have to preserve what's here. We really do. Last but not least, I want to say to you, as far as big business is concerned, we have to control big business. It is not a good thing, and it will never be a good thing when big business colonize our neighborhood. We've already seen the effects of colonization all over this earth. We don't need it to come into the United States of America anywhere. We need to control where we live. So I urge all of us to think about this, There are a lot of websites out there. We live in a host, you know, and we're blessed to live in King George because we have Dahlgren. We have many scientists here. And they are more. I've met them. They're my neighbors. They would love to tell us anything we don't know. Even if we have to go back to 3rd grade level. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Greer Conrad, and I live on Wilmer Way off of Round Hill Road. A gentleman that was just speaking about the earthquake and whatever, our well has not been the same since the earthquake. So there is the possibility of, I mean, the water is still drinkable, but it has a sediment in it that has been there since the earthquake, that had not been there before. My main concern with fracking is we don't know what will happen. And I, for one, want to go on record as not taking the chance that anything could happen. There's nothing that they could say to me that would convince me that there would be a financial aspect involved with this that would override any possibility of water contamination. It's our responsibility for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, 7 generations from now to have the clean water that we have in King George today. Charleston, West Virginia, my daughter and granddaughter live there. They still cannot drink the water. Now the state says, or the water company says the water's safe. The water still smells like the licorice, which is the chemical. Yesterday in Charleston, 6 schools were still found to have contaminated water. This was in the Wall Street Journal, so I don't know if that's fact or not. However, the water company says the water's safe to drink, but pregnant women should not drink the water, which says to me children should not drink the water, and no one else should drink the water. Freedom Industries immediately declared bankruptcy. The state of West Virginia is now picking up the tab to supply bottled water to over 300,000 residents. I don't think you guys want to start footing the bill in case we have to have bottled water. And then where, with fracking throughout the country, do we obtain clean drinking water? So I leave you with that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Bland. I live over in Johnson Drive. I'm going to make 3 quick points. The first is my friend Andy. He mentioned cradle to grave earlier, right? So he mentioned he was talking about cradle. With the grave, what happens when these wells are done? Are we going to have a bond set up to decommission them? How are we going to take care of that in 25, 50 years? Second, if something happens, an earthquake, and all the wells go bad, who pays for the water, or do we have a desalination plant set up? Who pays for that? And third, every once in a while, Mother Nature likes to come and kick you from behind, right? As the people over in Fukushima learned a couple years ago, right? So let's go back about 150 years, 100 or 170 years, when the New Madrid fault hit. Bells were ringing in Boston, right? So that's a major earthquake for this area. So I would imagine the wells here, wouldn't really be muddy. I mean, they would be just be bad, right? So. I did some research today, and they said the New Madrid fault has a 10% chance of producing an equivalent earthquake every 50 years. Now, 10%, it doesn't seem that much, but let's say you go for an elective surgery. If the doctor says you have a 1 in 10 safe chance of coming out of the surgery or not coming out of the surgery, no one's going to take those odds. So this is an elective surgery. We don't have to have this. And so the new Badger Fault will erupt again, or not erupt, it will break again. Maybe not in the next 50 years, but sometime in the next, say, 500 years. We have a very good chance of that happening. Do you all want to be remembered as part of the decision makers who ends up destroying the water table? I don't think you do. I think that's why we're here tonight. So, and that's my response.
Thank you, Mr. Bland.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Linda Wandress, and I live on 18 Ridgepoint Lane in South Stafford. Several years ago, I was doing a long-term sub-job for third graders and teaching them some of the SOLs. One of the concepts we had to teach was the thing called opportunity cost. And that's where you have to look at what you have to give up to get something else. And so that seems very, very important to this situation. The question to me is, what is the benefit of fracking for the citizens of this county versus the risk to the aquifer? As it's been mentioned, the aquifer is what gives us all life. So the question to me, and I don't think this has been answered, is what assurance do we have at this point in time that fracking can be done safely with no danger or very little danger to the complete contamination of the aquifer? Once the aquifer is gone or destroyed, it'll be gone to all of the citizens in this area and downstream. I don't believe, I've done quite a bit of research with this, I don't believe that there are any experts who can tell you that fracking can be done safely. In fact, if we look at some of the anecdotal evidence from northeastern Pennsylvania with the fracking in the Marcellus Shale and at Pavilion and some other places, the industry may try as much as it can to do a safe job, but I don't think they have really gotten it, that there are problems. The casings don't always work. Leaks can happen. So what I would hope is that you might, people are looking to you to make the decision, but I think we need to look at science and make sure that if you're making a decision to allow fracking, that we don't, we have evidence from the scientific community and not just the industry scientists that tell us that we can do this safely. The other concern that I have, in addition to obviously the protection of the aquifer, is who, if this was going to be done, who would be regulating this process? And as a former EPA attorney, I can tell you that I was quite appalled when I started learning about fracking to learn that the industry lobbyists worked really hard to get key provisions of this. Fracking is not regulated by many provisions of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And that really disturbs me because EPA's role in dealing with fracking is rather limited. And as it's also been stated tonight, there are many unknown chemicals in the quote-unquote witch's brew that is injected into the ground. And if you tried to find out anything about those chemicals and what effect they could have on the citizens and what effect they could have on the aquifer, if there was an accident, and we all know accidents happen. So I guess I just believe there are too many unknown things and too many unanswered questions at this point for a county to go through. We've seen counties who've done this before, and they've had problems. And so I would hope that you would try your best to get a well-balanced view of the safety of fracking before you would make a decision to go ahead with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
My name is Kenneth Snow, and I live in Essex County, and I agree completely that there needs to be a look at this issue from all points of view. And just very briefly, I want to say I work for Shore Exploration. I'm retired. I have an independent income. I'm not trying to keep my job. This is the last job I'm going to do for them. I'm like a contract laborer that leases land for them. And so, but I'm here because I have met a lot of very, very nice people that have leased their land to us and have hopes that not all of them just to see monetary gain themselves. Many of them are older people that want to see their grandchildren have good paying jobs and stay here in this area, not go to college and move off and never see them again, or hardly see them once or twice a year. There are a lot of things to be concerned with, but one of the big issues that people talk about is the water damage. Well, it's something Shore was responsible for 9 test wells to be drilled here 30 years ago that penetrated the aquifer, went well below the aquifer. They went, the shallowest of them was 5,500 feet deep. The deepest was 10,000 feet deep. And those, in all the 30 years or approximately since those wells were drilled, there is not one document or nothing I've heard of from anybody about any kind of damage that was done to the aquifer. With the technology of 30 years ago, which has certainly been improved upon, they were able to drill through the aquifer and do it no harm. And so, and also another real issue that keeps coming back again and again and again is hydrofracking. And what we propose to do here, we want to do what's called a nitrogen frac, or a CO2 frac, or an LPG frac. An LPG frac uses propane that is liquefied into a gel. And it is all, it's very expensive, and it's also recoverable and used again. And so people talk, when the idea of fracking comes up, you might mention, we want to use one of these new techniques in fracking, because as a matter of fact, when we drilled here, or I say we, Shore, when Shore drilled here approximately 30 years ago, they had some very significant shows of oil and gas. And we know for a fact that there's oil and gas here in the Taylorsville Basin. And so it's something that the reason, and also it's something that I heard someone suggest that Shore was like a front for bigger companies, and that's not true. Shore is a small independent, and the way independent oil companies work is they do take on partner companies to put together drill funds to spread their bets, because the national average is 1 out of 8 to 1 out of 10 new places where they drill, where they bring in successful wells. So companies that stay in business, in the exploration business, the small independents, spread their bets. The old saying, they don't put all their eggs in one basket.
Mr. Snow, can you start wrapping up?
Okay, but Exxon and Texaco did get involved with the wells we drilled here, and with their bottomless pockets, they chose not to spend the money to frack, which fracking began in the 1950s and had been going on for quite a number of years before those wells were drilled that had those significant shows. This is a Triassic basin. It's a freshwater prehistoric lake bed. It is not the sands that the gentleman talked about earlier. The Marcellus is prehistoric ocean for us, an entirely different thing. And too much water could make this type of shale expand and block the oil and gas. So it would be very foolish to do a hydrofrac here. And so it's something that I agree with all the people who say, you know, this, I know we're limited for time, but we need to have an in-depth look at everything that is involved on both sides of it. I know one last thing I want to say is the air that everybody in this room is breathing right now is cleaner than the air they were breathing in 1972. And that's because of the dozens and dozens of electrical power plants that have converted from coal to natural gas. And so that is something that we have all benefited from. And there are more things, and I'd love for an opportunity to talk at length and bring in some experts. Our chief geologist is a professor at Columbia University in New York City, is a world-renowned expert in Triassic basins.
Thank you, Mr. Snow.
So anyway, thank you.
Patrice Waits. I'm in the Fort Monroe district. My husband and I have lived here 23 years, worked on base. And when we first moved here, I was just amazed. I came from the congestion and pollution around the DC region. I was in the Washington suburbs prior to moving down here. And we've been delighted with how beautiful and pristine this area has been. We fully intended to remain here in retirement happily. I'm afraid I can be civil, but I'm very close-minded to this whole business. And if it does come to fracking in King George, unfortunately we will be departing. I don't know all the facts, but everything I have heard and read has been negative. My sister lives in Western Maryland. She was approached about fracking. Their area is much more suited to getting at larger deposits. She and her neighbors on 20 plus acres unequivocally rejected it. And some people in Northern Garrett County did sign leases, but I believe in Maryland it's currently under a moratorium. I don't know for how long. Lastly, our son-in-law was one of the fishermen who was displaced from his job by the BP oops a few years ago. They are now relocating to his new job in Arkansas. He's unemployed for 2 years. And according to people that I've spoken with down there, we went to visit our daughter and granddaughter. It basically killed the fishing industry, and regardless of what the oil did, the solution to the oil, we're fixing it, remains to be seen, but it's still pretty much a financial and fiscal disaster. So again, I don't think there's anything I need to know that they could say that would assure me that result in the trashing of this environment here in King George. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you all for your comments. We do appreciate them. I just want to, before we get into the discussions here, just so everybody understands, we are not pursuing any wells at this point in time in King George. There have been no permits or applications. And so we're trying to get ahead of the curve, to do our homework, to understand, and then to look at what we need to do to protect our aquifer and those assets based on science. So that's what we're doing. We appreciate your input. And tonight is the first and the second, really. Our county attorney went through our code. We've got some items there that need to be addressed, not only locality-wise, but at the state level, because we in Virginia operate under the auspices of the state and what they allow us to do. So I just want to let everybody know that there's not something pending breathing down our neck right now. So we're doing our due diligence, and that's part of the series we'll have. And as we gather our information, we'll then come together and have a town hall where we can get some more debate. I thank you all for your comments tonight. So at this point in time, we're going to go to our presentations, and I'm going to let the county administrator introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With us tonight, we have Mr. Bradley Lambert. He goes by Butch. He's the Deputy Director of Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. We also have Mr. David Spears, the State Geologist, and Mr. Rick Cooper. He's the Director of the Division of Gas and Oil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Butch Lambert. I'm the Deputy Director of the Virginia Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. My office is located in Eastern Gap, Virginia. That's as far west as you can go in Virginia without going into Kentucky. So just a point of reference of where we're located. Just a little bit of background about our department. We're located throughout the state. We have employees out on the eastern shore and all all the way as far as southwest Virginia. And we regulate